of interest or is made aware of any during the meeting to please let us know. Lindsay, will you please do the roll call?
Hank Carr. Shannon Castillo.
Here.
Tracy Johnson.
Here.
Jody Jones.
Here.
Brent Long.
Here.
Freddie Malone.
Here.
Aaron Murphy.
Here.
Lindsay Nichols.
Here.
William Roller.
Here.
Seth Thomas.
Here.
Craig Torbett.
Here.
Robert Williams. And Joe Wise.
All right, the next item is the approval of October minutes. They are in your packet. Are there any questions? Do we have a motion for approval?
I move we approve the October minutes as submitted.
Second. Hank Carr.
All right, we have a first and a second. Lindsay, can you do a roll call, please?
All righty. Hank Carr.
Yes.
Shannon Castillo.
Yes.
Tracy Johnson.
Yes.
Jody Jones.
Yes.
Brent Long.
Yes.
Freddie Malone.
Yes.
Aaron Murphy.
Yes.
Lindsay Nichols.
Yes.
William Roller.
Yes.
And Seth Thomas.
Yes.
All right, next up we have committee reports, human resource report, which I'm a part of that committee. I'm going to go ahead and touch on the associate evaluation form. Diana is sharing here. This document's from the city with the addition of an employee self-evaluation and goal tool. Take a moment to look at that and let us know if there are any questions. Just to clarify, this is not an evaluation form for Diana. This is for staff, the other staff. So there's a motion to approve this document coming from the HR committee. See if there's any questions or if we have a second.
Brent, it sounds like some people either haven't read it or aren't sure what the intent is. So let me just back up for a second. This was provided to the HR committee from the city using the city's evaluation process. And then we added the kind of back end performance expectations to it. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So one of the things I'm accustomed to seeing is more of a numbered ranking score. So at least you get to the end, you kind of know how people stack up against a total number of potential points. I don't know that you probably get to the same place the way it's laid out, but that was, so from my perspective, there ought to be a self-evaluation, an HR committee evaluation, or an executive director evaluation, and then I guess the president of the board or a board can make adjustments to those as they deem appropriate. That's what I'm accustomed to seeing, is a self, and then a mentor or a leader evaluation, and then somebody else who signs off on it and says, yeah, that's right, I agree with it, on behalf of the organization. That would be the only comment I have about it, is that there are an opportunity to have several people as well as the individual themselves.
Diana, would you like to make any comments on this?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Having major video and phone issues this morning. I certainly think that you could take this form and, but this section A, the performance review, could be done by both the executive director and a member of the Human Resources Committee could do it together. And then put it together into one form. The what I added from the cities, this is what the city uses for all of their managers, was this this section where, and right there's a section that the board chair also participates in the evaluation. And then this section here is the associate self-evaluation that would be done prior to the in-person review. So I think that there's definitely the ability for the board chair or an HR committee person, delegate, and the executive director to both come in and do it, and then they would decide on what the value would be.
If this gets approved today, I would like those notes put in the minutes.
That each employee review would be done by both their supervisor and a member of the HR committee.
Well, that there would be a self review of the entire. I'd like to see the employee review themselves on attendance on factor 1, factor 2, factor 3, as well as the performance expectations, then their supervisor, and then somebody at the board level.
Hey, this is Aaron. I agree with what Hank is saying. I think it's only right to give the employee an opportunity to assess themselves in conjunction with what was already said here on this conference call. But I just think there's some value in an employee assessing themselves. I think we can gain a lot from that. I think it'd be a disservice not allowing them that opportunity.
Diana, when does this need to be used between now and the next board meeting? Is this something that we can retool a little bit based on the comments? Do we have some time to do that before our next board meeting and represent this?
We do. My goal was to do this every 6 months, and Lindsay's been an employee longer than 6 months, but we can I can make the changes, or we could just go into the motion could be to include that the employee creates or the employee does the evaluation sections A, B, C as well. And
Is it our intention to do these employee evaluations once a year in December or whenever, November, or do we intend to try to do it at their anniversary date of their hire?
I would prefer to do it twice a year, every 6 months. So the 6 month and the 1 year anniversary. And because we're setting goals and objectives, and a lot of times those change within a year time. And since we have a small staff, you'll see that the objectives should reflect performance expectations over a 6 to 12 month period. So I think I would like for us to do it every 6 to 12 months, 6 and 12 months.
But based off of the anniversary, not off the fiscal year. Is that what you're saying, Diana?
Yes.
Okay.
And then compensation reviews would happen at at the once a year interval, or how's that? How do you see that working?
Yes, that would be at the 12th month.
Okay.
This is Jody. I like the idea of bringing it back, and it just sounds like there's a bunch of implementation steps here that need to be like written into policy rather than in a note or in minutes or something, if that makes sense. Like, and I'm just trying to remember, because I'm on the HR committee, I'm trying to remember where we have already got a lot of those personnel policies written down, and just adding this in seems like it would make sense.
Jody, I think they're already written down in it was the information we approved, I don't know, 3 months ago. And Diana, you'd have to update the group on it, but I remember seeing anniversary or review dates or review processes and procedures. I just don't remember what it was called.
Right. So we approved an associate guide that had everything in there. Probably, you're right, Hank, 2 to 3 months ago, and we had been dealing with a couple of different evaluation forms, and that's when I went to the city and asked for what they used for their managers and supervisors. So this is what they sent, and then HR committee looked over and approved this in the September meeting. But we can definitely table it, make some more changes to it, and bring it back.
Sounds like that's the consensus and the prudent thing to do. So I'll rescind my motion, and we will look to make some of these changes and present it again next month at the board meeting. Moving on, KRAs, which stands for Key Result Areas for Executive Director and staff. Diana Cantler has begun her 6-month coaching process with Summit Leadership. First, going to ask her to walk us through some of the key results areas that she has worked on as a draft form here to present for input from the board. And then after that, I'll ask Shannon Castillo and Tracy Johnson, who were able to be a part of those coaching sessions, to provide any input that they have. So Diana, would you go ahead and take us through this?
Yes. So a KRA is a key result area, and that's how the coaching Dave wanted us to use to define success for the organization. And then at the first coaching session, we went through SMART goals and how they support the key results that we identified. What I did was I took the priorities that the board listed during the June strategic planning session. That was the HAP transfer and the revitalization of the John Sevier, our organizational structure, parking solutions, best use of the downtown center, business recruitment, and TIF facilitation. And then I took the areas for improvement and growth from the evaluation, and that's organization and communication, strategic leadership, and TIF and business experience. Using those items, I went and he wanted 3 key result areas. So I divided it into John Sevier property management and disposition, redevelopment and leasing of first floor space. So that goes into business recruitment and TIF facilitation is part of that. And then internal and external marketing and communications plan. I can go through everything with you all if you like, but what I did was I just created goals that could be implemented in a 30-day period, and then moving forward. But every month we will identify additional KPIs and SMART goals and deadlines and to in these 3 areas of priority for the staff.
So if I can clarify, Diana, the KRA is the long-term goal,
Yes,
and the SMART objectives and the KPIs are the shorter-term action items that ladder up to those long-term objectives, correct?
correct.
Okay, so the SMART goals and the KPIs will change as those items are checked off the list, but the KRAs will remain for the foreseeable future, and that's what you're proposing here.
Correct. Are there any questions about this? Does anybody have any things that they think is missing or are off on the KRAs?
Diana, what do you mean by redevelopment and leasing of first floor space?
Well, we know for business recruitment and for the redevelopment to occur in the redevelopment district, the priority is the first floor space, because the upper level comes along with that first floor space. If we have less vacancies, if we have property owners that are utilizing TIF or some of our other grants and growing the business community, it's through that first floor space. So Lindsay's working with the marketing committee on a marketing campaign to sort of showcase our first floor spaces. We're working with property owners and development services to make sure that the first floor spaces are up to code and are able to be utilized. That makes an investment in our property tax base.
How does downtown center play into this?
Well, downtown center's lease is not up until December 2023. So at some point in early 2022 or earlier, we can begin discussions with Northeast State about how they are on their that space. Are they utilizing it to the best of their ability? And if we decide to renegotiate a lease or if we decide to go a different direction. But they still have 2-3 years left on that lease.
I guess for me, I think downtown center ought to be on here. I realize that lease rolls over in 3 years, but I think there's an opportunity to make something happen sooner than 3 years. There's definitely some things we want to do there that relate to parking and elevators or exterior access and other things that have been on our radar. And it feels like that's something we ought to start thinking about next year, but that's my opinion.
I think that's a good point, Hank. I was in some of those meetings with Northeast State when we've discussed the elevator, and I know that that gets them, a little bit. They want to know what their futures is going to look like. They're going to want to know what their future is going to look like before they, commit to letting us eat up some space there with an elevator room or equipment room, what have you. So I think that is going to be something that probably does come up within the next year conversation.
We certainly can add that as an ongoing KRA. We have the parking garage will begin to be opened again this Saturday, November 28th. For Small Business Saturday will be the first weekend that it is open. And I've also are getting quotes for a combination keypad lock for the exterior stairwell. So folks that park in there that have a parking permit, if they especially on Fridays or even in the evenings, if they can't go through the lobby, they'll be able to access that stairwell, and that'll be especially important when the water project starts mid-January. Water sewer project on Market Street.
So Diana, you're going to be bringing this back before us every month and letting us know how things are going with these SMART goals, KPIs. Is this an action item for this month to approve, or are you just here to seek board input?
Just board input.
This is Jody. I think I don't disagree that, the downtown center is an important consideration, but I also know that we've discussed that Diana's activities need to be closely tied to a strategic plan, and we're still kind of in a holding pattern, I think, a little bit on all of that. Until we have that, I think every time this comes in front of us, we'll sort of be like flies swatting at it to come up with, well, what about this and that? And just
So we can get together and start doing some additional strategic planning. The city is also working on one, and there's a session in January. And so my thought was that we would wait till at least they have their second strategic plan with their key economic development partners. And then we would take some of the insight that they have and add it to some of the work that we've already done.
sounds great.
Hey, Matt Manley here. I'll just throw in that while there may be some mixed messages about all these strategic planning efforts going on, the planning department is also reviewing and updating and looking to extend the comprehensive plan for the city. We're calling it the bridge plan. We're bridging the gap between our old plan and when we would write a new plan after we have current census data. So we're waiting for the 2020 census data to be available. So we've had a big review process and assessed the old comprehensive plan, and we've added some refreshed language in there. And so there's an opportunity, and Diana and I have talked about this. The Planning Commission is really excited about following this bridge plan. This is what the state law authorizes cities to create and use as the guiding document for their city. So while all these other strategic planning efforts are happening, really the one that's supposed to be the guiding document by state law is this comprehensive plan. And so there's a whole section on downtown revitalization that was part of what guided efforts over the years downtown. But, it's a different day now. And so it really needs some refreshed language, and anything that would really help move JCDA's goals forward should be mentioned in there. It doesn't have to be super detailed, but big picture ideas that you guys want to see achieved in the next 3 to 5 years should be put in that document. So that you can get support from the Planning Commission. If it gets adopted by the Planning Commission and the City Commission, then that really, that's a lot of support from elected officials. So sorry for the long-winded comment, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
So Matt, you'll see that I didn't know what the timeline is for the bridge plan. I know right now, and I'll remind everybody that I sent an email out for your comments back a couple of weeks ago, but can you give us an idea of what the timeline and the plan is, how it is being put together?
Yeah, so it will be very similar to the strategic plan. I think that the City Commission's been working on. I think there is now an effort to marry those two, hopefully a little bit, at least refer to one another so that they are aligned. They certainly are not opposed to one another. So the timeline will be similar. The Planning Commission will consider for adoption in early January. We will workshop with the City Commission in January, hopefully. So we're thinking first, and it would be an ordinance. That's what we're proposing. Now they could say, no, we'll adopt it by resolution, or they could decide, but we would prefer they adopt it by ordinance, which would be first reading at the end of January and then wrapping up by middle of February. That's the ideal timeline. And that's both Planning Commission and City Commission adoption.
So when would the public or boards such as JCDA be able to add in verbiage that they think needs to be included? I know I worked through the current plan and things that we have achieved and things that are continuing and things that may need to be removed. But is there going to be a time that, like I said, boards such as JCDA will be able to add or put some input in?
Absolutely. So that time is now. That was really the time between when we sent this out to all of our review partners, as we're calling them, all the economic development folks, all our different department heads, any agency, all our housing agencies, anybody who explicitly had some input and stake in the plan, stakeholders. So we had 18 folks that we sent it to and said, hey, and you know, Diana, that was when you did your review.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was also an opportunity to add any new language. And then we also have opened it up to the general public and said, hey, you know, here's all this information. We have a presentation about this. This is what a bridge plan is. Here's what we're trying to achieve. And so that opened up on October 20th. And there is, you know, because we're not really coming back to it until January, there's, you know, a good long spell here where I would strongly encourage, take time, look at it, think about what you guys, what would be good, what would fit within this plan. Shoot it to me, shoot it to Preston, and say we want to make sure these things are covered. And you don't even have to do the language of fitting it into the plan. Send us, hey, this is things we think should be reflected in a 3 to 5 year plan for downtown, and we'll massage it in before it goes to Planning Commission. But at this point, we're looking at content that is been pretty well reviewed, and well, I say that it's been reviewed by the committee that's worked on it, reviewed by our partners. Our public response has been abysmal. We've gotten really, really very little comment back from the public. But I won't digress on that during this meeting, but would definitely love for that to be made a priority and to send me some stuff soon as I work to write. At this point, I'm working on polishing the document to make it more presentable. It's just basically raw content at this point.
So what I'd like to recommend, I thought there was going to be a workshop type thing with the partners. I don't know why I assumed that, but what I'd like to suggest is that we do a workshop the second week of December. That would, anyone that wanted to participate with that, and Matt, certainly you would be on that call, and we would do a workshop to just sort of go over the things that are in the comprehensive plan now, how as they pertain to the JCDA, and if there's any direction or recommendations that we want to make to the city of things that need to be included in that.
Is there an existing meeting for that? Or are you talking about scheduling a meeting?
I would schedule it. Yes.
Okay. I do have limited availability that week, but I can get with you after this meeting to schedule that.
Okay.
This is Joe Wise. Can I just chime in? Diana, I have sent you a copy of the city strategic plan that the commission has worked on, and
yes,
the meeting you're alluding to in January. So that document is finished and available. So the link that I've sent you can be shared with everyone on JCDA, lest I think we get too overwhelmed by the distinction between the more broad brush vision strategic plan document the commission has worked on and the bridge plan, let's kind of keep them, the bridge plan, as I understand it, and it's only recently been presented to the city commission as an ongoing project, is really something that's going to guide questions of land use and those sorts of things. And Matt can certainly correct me if that's not the case. The strategic plan is trying to be something bigger than that, so that it has the potential to guide all of our various partners in their respective efforts, whether we're talking about JCDA or CVB or even people like Ballard and East Tennessee State, can look at that and see what chords we're trying to hit. And so I mention that just to say that the document, and I think this will become clear when everybody on JCDA can see that strategic plan document, that it's more of a compass than it is a specific route guidance, if that makes sense. It's something that gives us a broader direction and therefore allows a little bit of interpretation over time as circumstances evolve.
Joe, I'm happy to spend some time. We did come to the commission in late September, early October, with a presentation of a description of what the bridge plan was and what we were doing. You were unavailable at that agenda review meeting, so that, I think that was a missed opportunity. But the bridge plan is an extension of the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan covers everything from transportation to housing, bicycle and greenway, sidewalk plans, transit, yes, land use, urban growth and annexation, all of our services, our facilities, Freedom Hall, and I'm leaving off 3 or 4: downtown revitalization, historic preservation. So it is very broad and very detailed. And we're not doing a full rewrite of that. We're just extending the plan we already have and reviewing it and assessing it. And so that strategic plan actually, so we have an economic development element in the comprehensive plan, and there seems to be a lot of alignment between the strategic plan and the economic development element. And so I would like to talk about it more. We don't want to miss an opportunity maybe or have competing documents, but we can talk about that on another time.
Matt,
I guess the distinction I would make is they're not competing documents. I think if you look at the strategic plan the commission has worked on, nothing about it delves into the level of detail you're talking about. And Preston has that document and should have had it now for several weeks. So you may want to look at it that it is at the 30,000 foot level, and what you're describing is, if it is actually used, down in the actual deployment level.
Hey, so I'd like to bring this back to JCDA for just a second. So Matt, I heard you talking, and I make sure I'm thinking right. The thing that comes to my mind that we want to make sure, that I would like to make sure is at least considered on that, is the redevelopment of those many warehouses on Cherry Street into parking or some other purpose. Is that what you're talking about? That kind of
Yeah. That's a great example of one that would be a really specific recommendation. But when you're talking about downtown, you need to get to that level. So downtown is one of the most specific, detailed elements of the ones I just listed. So that would be a great example. And I think that would be a good one to add. Another example is, consider returning Main Street back to the brick-lined street. So that's another example of just a very detailed, specific recommendation. So, yes.
So Diana, you're going to hold a planning session in December for us to review this and add comment. Is that what you're going to do?
Yes.
And I think just one more comment. This is Jody. I think this actually is the exact same conversation we had last year at this time, sadly, where we were thinking about how to coordinate, and we should be thinking about how to coordinate JCDA's strategic plan with that of the city and others. But also, like, my subjective sense is that we're all in the same city and we've all been in the same circles and had the same conversations. And, you know, we, I think, have the capacity to sketch out a strategic plan for the JCDA that's relatively well informed based on our knowledge of other entities around us and what they're up to and interested in. And then, you know, if we need to kind of make some minor modifications to, you know, make them fit well together, we can. But I don't think we have to. And I like the timelines we're hearing about. I just think that, you know, we can certainly be proactive and pull together something, and it'll make it easier for us to navigate for you, Diana, you know, when you're working on this stuff with the consultant.
Jody, I would agree with you. This is Matt again. And one thing I was, you know, that you may want to consider, and also with the city commission strategic plan as well, is just make reference to those strategic plans in this document. So that frees you up to do the granular level and whatever makes sense for JCDA, but just so that it piggybacks on and is also supported at another level. Just make reference to it, and then you've got a little marriage there. And I think that's enough of an alignment. You could go as little as that, or, you know, as much as, you know, really, dovetailing them together in detail. So I agree with your comment.
And I would suggest, this is Joe Wise, that's a conversation the director and planning staff can have. I don't know that the full JCDA board needs to be involved until there's some sort of specific actionable recommendation. We need to lead at the executive level and then let us endorse the vision rather than kind of inventing it by committee.
Yeah, Joe, I agree. Here's the thing, guys. We've done all this work. I mean, there's enough good lists out there to find the 2 to 5 year horizon of things that we collectively as a group think are important. I'd like to see what you think that is, Diana. Let's get the group to ratify it, and let's get that off to the right people to get it included.
This is Shannon. If I could kind of refocus us back to JCDA and these KRAs. One note I know that I have talked with before is when we look at the communication part of that KRA, just really focusing on the intentionality of rebuilding and building good relationships with the county commission, I think is super important to focus on. The other thing, on May 28th minutes, we instituted an interim role for Diana to end on November 30th. Well, it's November 20th. Since then, since May 28th, you know, we've hired Dave McCauley to be a coach, which I think is a really good, smart move. And because of that, I would like to make a motion that we extend that interim position through that coaching period.
We have a motion to extend the executive director's interim position through the end of the 6-month coaching period with Summit Leadership. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
May I ask a question? This is Aaron. How does Diana feel about that?
Sorry, I was muted. You know, Tennessee is an at-will state, and so we can extend a contract. That's fine for 6 months. I'm certainly appreciative of the coaching that we've started and some of the focus that the board has been more active in providing. And so if you want to do a 6-month contract extension, that's fine. Like I said, the Tennessee's an at-will work state. So you have the ability at any time to to make a decision on your executive director.
So Hank here, I'll make a couple of comments. I made the motion back in whenever it was May or June we put a deadline to this because my hope was, and it should be reflected in the minutes, that we would get this resolved. It is, I don't like this being open-ended. I don't think it's fair to the team. I don't think it's good for us. And so I'm disappointed we didn't get it finished, but we have made a lot of great progress, and I think we're heading in the right direction, and I think that's a good thing. Here's what I would like to ask the HR committee to do is if this gets approved and extended for 6 months, regardless of how it works out long term, and I wouldn't. This is not in any way to suggest it changes. In fact, the odds are it will continue to carry on and become permanent if things all go well. But I would like to see the HR committee go back and address the comp for this position to bring it back to us in January to understand what it should be, because it hasn't been adjusted in, correct me if I'm wrong, at least 2 years, if not 3. And the role has definitely changed. And I'd like to see that dealt with, regardless of whether it's interim or permanent. I'd like to understand what that should be. So I support the motion, but I want to see a comp study done and a recommendation on what that should look like for the next 3 years. And then we can work our way through this and get everybody where they need to be, both performing professionally and also in a compensation perspective.
Thank you for those comments, Hank.
I'm happy to make that a motion, but I don't know that it needs to be.
Do you want?
Does it make sense to amend Shannon's motion?
That would be up to Shannon.
I'm fine with that.
So just for clarity, what would the, I'm sorry, what is the, go ahead and ask your question, because I think it's what I was about to ask.
Yes, I was just asking for clarity's sake and for Lindsay's sake, would you readdress your motion, Shannon, to include the friendly amendment? What is the motion?
Hank, can you verbalize it?
Sure. So the way I see it is there's a motion on the floor to extend the interim period for the executive director's role. And I would add that, sorry guys, I got to get my head wrapped around this for a second. On the condition that the HR committee evaluate and make a recommendation to the board on the compensation for the executive director's role on a go-forward basis, no later than January 30th or February 30th, whatever everybody thinks is relative, that we can take action on and get that squared away. I don't think it's reasonable that we have let this go on this far. Regardless of the decision we make, it needs to get dealt with.
Hey guys, this is William. Is there a reason we're not making this a permanent position? We've had the time, we've seen performance. What's the issue in not just moving forward with the original plan?
Well, William, thanks for that clarification. I'm going to add to it. Hank, when you began your comments, you said you were hoping that it would be resolved by now. I just want to make sure that I understand what the it is. And I'm thinking the it is a permanency to the staffing and the executive director position. And today you've referenced information relative to compensation, but am I correctly understanding what the it is? And then to William's point, I think it's a good question. Is there a reason we haven't or can't? And I guess this comes back to the HR committee, but is there a reason we haven't or can't make it permanent now?
Yeah, I'll be
And
happy.
or what are we going to make happen the next 6 months?
All right, I'll be happy to address that. So my motion back in May was that the executive director position be interim until November the 30th. And at that time, if it wasn't resolved, it became a non-interim position, for lack of a better word. There was an evaluation done, and we reviewed that evaluation last month. There was a recommendation made and agreed to in a motion last month that the executive director would enter into a 6-month coaching process with Dave McCauley. No action was asked for or taken last month. And I don't think it's reasonable for us as a board to be asked to take action today on something that we weren't prepared to take action on and provided, the correct information. I don't think that's reasonable. I've already said, I wished we'd got this done and resolved and made a decision and had a vote on it and moved on, but we haven't. It's okay. A recommendation was made to move into a 6-month coaching process. So kind of the way the dominoes are stacked up, we need to do something or the position changes. And Shannon's made a recommendation that's consistent with last month's board action, in my opinion. Regardless of whether it's interim or permanent, the compensation hasn't been looked at in, Diana, correct me, how many years?
This, well, in December, it will be 3 years.
Okay, so 3 years. I don't think that's reasonable, whoever sits in the job. And so that needs to get done, and it doesn't need to get done in June. It needs to get done in January. And it's work that can be hired out, and a quick study can be done. And then the board can make a decision on what that piece is and move on, in my opinion. I think we ought to let the coaching process work through its intended purpose. And if you read some of the review notes that came from Dave McCauley last month, there's areas of good performance, and there's areas that need improvement. And the board, it would appear last month, decided that coaching was appropriate. And so this action ratifies that and moves us to a conclusion. I'm just trying to clean up the details.
This is Craig. Do I understand correctly that if we do not take action, however, that by November 30th, that the position becomes permanent by default?
That's correct. The way I read it.
I'll be the first to say, and to Diana's earlier point, it's an at-will state. I think in some ways it's all semantics anyway. You can call it interim, you can call it permanent. At any point, any of our staff that doesn't perform to our satisfaction, they can be gone. So I think that in some ways I don't even see the point.
Well, she can still get the coaching regardless of the label that we give her, right? So yeah, I agree. I don't know if it's meaningful or not to make a recommendation to kick the can 6 months down the road and revisit it and find some other reason to kick it down the road when we've got other important things to do. Maybe give her a little security in knowing that she's got some authority while it lasts, and move this agenda down the road.
Well, if that's what the board chooses to do, then I'd ask it be brought back in a formal recommendation with from the HR committee, and it be recommended that way and the board take a vote up or down on it. But not to do it in the format we're talking about here, which is, hey, let's drop it into the middle of another conversation.
This is Joe Wise. I would agree with that. I think the fundamental issue here is making sure that we send a clear message of support for our executive director. And I think we have done that in making the investment in coaching. I think the big challenge we face in this area is that we're trying to treat Diana as an employee. And while she is employed by JCDA, she's its executive director. And so her relationship to the organization and this board needs to be fundamentally different than that of a supervised employee. I think we need to think of it in terms of analogous to somebody like Brian Noland or Alan Levine or Pete Peterson or anybody in those kinds of roles that is involved and responsible at a different sort of level. And I just think at this point, there are too many elements of where JCDA sits in November of 2020 that have happened by coincidence and accident, whether we're talking about the separation from the net rep, whether we're talking about who's in that director role. Those things have just sort of happened almost by chance or by musical chairs. And I think we owe it to the process to be much clearer and deliberate in what we do, or we will forever be having meetings like this where we're trying to resolve issues that really ought to be happening at the staff level.
Yeah. Look, here's my request, folks. If we want to make decisions like this, that's A-okay, but they ought to be done in the format of a clear board package with a recommendation that we can prepare for and make a decision on.
This is Shannon. Actually, Brent and I had this very direct conversation about that our board packets need to have. And we probably just need to do a better job of reviewing those, making sure that it's very clear what we're doing every month.
So there's a motion on the floor, and I don't know whether it's, and it's been seconded, but there's a friendly amendment to it. And I don't know if it's been accepted or not.
This is Tracy. I'll chime in just for a second. I did second the motion, just frankly, to move us forward a little bit. But I do agree with Diana and the state of Tennessee. We're an at-will state. So it's a little, I'll just leave it there. But if the board wants to extend this another 6 months, I think it's fine. But we're an at-will state.
So there's a motion and a second. Has the amendment to the second been accepted? Or has the friendly amendment been accepted?
Shannon, you made the first motion. Hank, I believe you made the friendly amendment. Shannon, do you accept the friendly amendment?
I accept the friendly amendment.
Tracy, you've seconded it. Do we have any further discussion?
For point of order, I think Tracy has to accept the amendment as well to her second, if I'm not mistaken.
Great point.
So I'm accepting the amendment that the HR committee will do a compensation study. Correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Thank you for restating that. So we're ready for roll call then?
If there's no further conversation, we'll do a roll call.
Okay. And I see Joe Wise is added on here now, so I'll make sure to add that. Okay. Hank Carr,
Yes.
Shannon Castillo,
Yes.
Tracy Johnson,
Yes.
Jody Jones,
Yes.
Brent Long,
Yes.
Freddie Malone,
Yes.
Aaron Murphy,
Yes.
Lindsay Nichols,
Yes.
William Roller,
Yes.
Seth Thomas,
Yes.
Craig Torbett,
Yes.
and Joe Wise.
Yes.
Diana, thank you for sharing your KRAs with us. Shannon, you gave some input from how the meeting with Dave McCauley went. I know Tracy Johnson was also available for at least part of that meeting. Tracy, do you want to give any further input before we move on to the next item?
Yeah, I wanted to take just a minute with the board. And Diana, if you'll back up, please, to your KRAs. And this is very important for the board. And this has come up on the 2 different calls that I've been on with Dave McCauley. The congruency between the board of directors and Diana with what her mission is and what her charge is. So she was evaluated. The evaluations were shared with the board, and she was then asked to determine what her key result areas were based on the evaluations, and then also feedback given at all of our strategic planning sessions. I think it's very important today that this board look at this document and let Diana know today in the board meeting if this is what we feel she needs to be working on. Because this is what, frankly, this is what we're paying for. This is what Shannon and I are spending time monthly with a coach, with Diana. And if this is not what the board wants Diana to be working on, I'd like some feedback today. Sorry to be pointed, but that's just how I feel about it. So if you love it, tell me you love it. But if you don't love it, let's talk about it and let's get Diana focused and give her a real shot at improved performance in the areas that the board wants her to improve on. Let's dig in and get that done. That's all I have to say.
Tracy, Hank here. So I understand what you're asking, and I think it's the right question. Here's my request is if those kinds of questions need to get answered at the board level, and they do, somebody should put in the front of this board package, action item, approve KRAs. When I read approve in a board package, it tells me that I'm going to be asked to take action on something. And I better do my homework, or I have, I can't cry over spilt milk at that point. But it doesn't say that in here. And so I, for the record, have read them, and I think we're absolutely on the right track. But my request on a go forward basis, if there's an action item that somebody wants to take approval on, it ought to be noted in here as an action item, and then we can all be prepared. That's my only request. And if it's not an action item, we shouldn't be voting on it.
I agree.
My feedback on the document is that there isn't enough focus on bringing our strategic plan to fruition. I see work with the city on strategic planning, but it doesn't help me understand how that's going to move our strategic plan forward. And ultimately, I would love to see that plan or some draft of that plan in a place where it's dictating what's going into this consultant work.
I think as far as the, and Shannon, please chime in here. I know that you know Dave better than I do. I actually don't know him at all. But the coaching is pretty, from my perspective, it's pretty high level as far as like Joe, somebody on the call used a 30,000 foot analogy. It's pretty cloud level, kind of keeping Diana focused. Dave doesn't pretend to know what a TIF is or a HUD is he doesn't know our business. And he's very clear about that he doesn't know our business. So that's the reason I wanted the board, and I'm just jumping in here. I don't think we need to vote on it, but I do think that Diana needs input. And what I'd like to ask is that she gets input from the board in a board meeting, instead of, one person says this and one person says that, and she gets a lot of scattered direction. I wanted, when I saw that Diana put this in the board packet, it just keeps coming up in these phone calls that Diana needs clear direction from the board on what she's working on. And she's put together this list, and I think it's a great list. But like to Hank's point, if he needs to see the Northeast State property under that SMART category, let's get it in there. Let's get this dialed in, so maybe, I don't know if there is action from the board, but if you have feedback, I think this is a good opportunity to do that. But the coaching sessions are pretty high level. Shannon, would you agree with that? He's not digging in on what happened at the John Sevier this week, because he doesn't really know our business.
Mhm. I agree.
And I guess that would be, this is Joe Wise, the takeaway that I hope we would have is that ultimately I want Diana to feel supported and empowered and accountable to be the executive director. And what that means is functioning at that 30,000 square foot level, reconciled to our strategic vision, and bringing that information to us that we need to act on in a way that formalizes the governance response to those things. And so I think what Dave is doing may be helpful, because on some level, like, what Diana and her team do on Monday specifically is not really of the board's concern. And so when we put the packet together and we put I want for her to feel empowered to own the details at that level, reconciled back to the policies of the board and our strategic plan. And to Tracy's question, I think this document does start to do that effectively, but like in a broader overarching way, that's what I would hope we take away from this, is some control, giving her some sense that this is hers to set course within those parameters.
Thanks, Joe. And I do agree with you there. And, to Hank's point, I think we were all hoping we'd have some better resolution by November 30, but it literally took us to September to get to an evaluation platform to have our ED evaluated the first time in years. So the fact that it took us that long to get that far, I'm not surprised at all that we're here. I'm encouraged that we're here because we're at least doing something, and that makes me happy to do something. But I do not want for another 6 months to go by and then us sit in a board meeting and Diana say, well, here's what I did and here's what I worked on over 6 months, and here's the improvements that were made. And then for her to feel like, well, that's not what we wanted you to be doing. And so, and maybe I'm off base, but I want to make sure that she's off on the right foot. And whether it flies or whether it flops, knows what's going to happen in 6 months. But I want to make sure that she's on the right foot with this board, looking at these KRAs, that everything's in there. So if we want something else thrown in there, we can bring it back to the next board meeting and look at it again. That's great. But this document is out there, and Diana, correct me, it's a living document, right? So we can move, add, change.
So every month there will be new KPIs and SMART goals and deadlines set. The KRAs will not change, but we can go back. Dave had asked for 2 to 3 KRAs, but we definitely can add a 4th that would encompass some strategic leadership as well. and then we can add in the downtown center as a KPI, and look at that probably. That would be a good discussion to start having maybe in February with the Northeast state.
If the board doesn't have any overwhelming, this is not what I want you to be doing, Diana, I'm fine to move on with it. And it's not a voting thing. In my opinion, I think it's just, it's like I said, it's come up twice on these calls that Shannon and I have been on, that the board needs cohesion and agreement on what Diana's being coached on.
Hey, Tracy. Tracy, let me just, I just need to clarify. My comments, my disappointment was not in the HR committee. I promise you that. It was in the we as in all of us. We just haven't quite got it done yet. Okay, in fairness to everybody, it is not all on the HR committee at all. And it was not what I meant to suggest. But and I'll try to wrap this up because we got a couple of things to deal with and we're out of time. But look, I think we're on the right track 100%. I think you are going to turn this ship around in 6 months. As of March, we will be a year into what was a pretty rough start to a strategic planning process, but we're a year into it in March, 9 months now. Made a lot of accomplishments, a lot, and we've narrowed the list down. And I think that's the thing we have to focus on, is keeping this list narrowed down to things we can accomplish, but keeping some things on the horizon that are important to the organization. And so let's don't get tunnel vision, but let's don't try to solve everybody's problems in the world. So, and I think we're doing it. So that's just my 2 cents worth, and I'll turn it over to the chairman.
All right. Well,
If I
again,
may,
yes,
hey,
go ahead. Sorry.
If I may, Tracy had asked for some input, so I want to offer a little bit in terms of the KRAs and the document. And Diana, you might scroll back up, but when I think about the JCDA in the next few years, the main thing I think about, the primary thing, is the John Sevier. And I'm going to try to wrap even the strategic plan and some of that. But Tracy, you said that the coaching with Dave is very high level, but when I look at this document, it seems very granular to me. When I think about a deadline for John Sevier, I don't think about an operations committee report or something to the JCDA. When I think about a deadline for John Sevier, I think about, we're going to have chosen a developer by this date. I think about that as a deadline. And it comes back to something Joe Wise said. If a benchmark along the way is I need to have an operations committee report done by November 23rd, that's a benchmark. I don't even know I would call that a deadline. I think about a deadline as being the big picture stuff. And then Diana determines what's necessary to get us to those big picture deadlines. She determines from an executive level, okay, the board has said, I want to have a developer for new housing chosen by this deadline. What do I need to do between now and then to make that happen? She determines that. The board has set the big picture deadline. So I don't like how granular, I guess, this is. Now, maybe it needs to have multiple levels, a level for the board and then a sub level for Diana. But, and as big a thing as the John Sevier is for the JCDA, it looks like the lesser thing on this document. So there's some thoughts and input.
We can definitely add an additional column, Freddie. This was the recommendation of Dave. He really wanted us to look at 30, 60-day goals, and then the arching goal is the KRA. But I definitely can add in a additional column that has, a listing of long-term goals and what those are, and then the objectives on how we're going to get there, the steps on how we're going to get there.
All right. Well, in the interest of time, we're going to move forward. The good news is we'll be meeting again in just a few short weeks, so we can readdress this at that time. Moving on to John Sevier operations. Jim, will you take us through that, please?
Okay. Thank you. You have the manager's report in the packet, and so we don't need to talk about that too much, but I do want to say what an uplifting experience it was to serve the Thanksgiving lunch at the John Sevier. It really showed us that it's a community there, not just a transitional housing place. And I know that board members Jody and Shannon that led us the teams to deliver those. I think they would agree. It was a great thing. I was happy to be a part of it. I also want to say that Taste Buds, who did the meal, I ate one of the leftovers last night for dinner, and it was awesome. So they did a great job. The roof work was scheduled to begin on the John Sevier on November 17th, but we found that we had a permit issue. The historic preservation permit was delayed, and so we had to delay the start of the project. And our contractor has not yet got us back on the schedule. I'm waiting today to find out when the work will begin. We still have the process with changing insurance providers at the John Sevier, and Middle Oak Insurance that we're working with has to do an inspection first, and they've been delayed somewhat because of the travel restrictions during COVID times. So we're waiting to get the final there, and if the final inspection works out fine, then we'll redo the insurance, and that'll be a fairly significant savings per year, $30,000 to $40,000. I want to mention about
that's fantastic, Jim.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Diana, I think everybody's up to date on where the transition team is on the providing or producing an alternative for the John Sevier. And Diana, was there anything else you wanted to add there? Okay, I'll move on.
Sorry, I was just unmuting myself. So I have put together a summary of the residential services that are provided by the two entities that we're looking at for management. Of course, it's not black and white, but I tried to put it into categories, and the transition team can look over that at their meeting on Monday.
Okay, and then on to the financials. You don't have the September financials yet because they're not absolutely finalized. There's still a few issues that we're looking at. But I will tell you that we received the TIF revenue from the city of Johnson City during the month of September of $372,000, and that was up 4.8% from the previous year. And in terms of expenditures, the only real expenditures we had were scheduled debt payments. So the September looked like a normal month, and you'll see that at our next meeting. And I don't know if there's much to discuss on the manager's report that you have here, but I will say that it was a normal month in September. We had some plumbing issues, and they were fixed. Those happen. We have something in plumbing happening every month, so there was nothing unusual there. And that the financials for the John Sevier are holding right in line with our budget, with the exception of water and sewer bills, which have been high, and we're looking into why that is the case. We haven't gotten a good answer for it yet. The net income at the John Sevier for September was right on target.
Hey, Jim, let me just add some color, and I'll just say thank you to Jim and to Diana. They've worked a lot on John Sevier in the last month. We are now having weekly meetings as we kind of think about how to get this insurance resolved, and also make a long-term commitment on a management company. And so we're going to bring back to you a recommendation. Is it December? What's the date, Diana, that we're going to do this? December 4th?
December 4th.
So we're going to bring back a recommendation. We'd ask everybody to try to make that called meeting. And I don't know how it's going to go yet. There's, again, a lot of work's has gone into it, and we'll wrap it up here in the next week.
Thanks, Hank.
I will add one other thing, and I'm not sure how much I don't remember how much we've discussed it, but we were told that we had to submit an audited report different than the JCDA audit to HUD, and Jim was able to get an extension. He's been working with Melissa Stegall-Jones and Karen McMurray at BCS many hours in putting that together. The folks at M&M have been very good to work with to get us the information that they have provided over the years to HUD for that. But it has taken an enormous amount of time for Jim to get that together and do it in the time that we have for the extension. It's unfortunate that M&M didn't send us the documents that needed to be the first reminder of when it was due. But Jim and the folks at BCS have been working really hard on that. And I just want to say thank you to them. And because he got the extension, it saved us anywhere from, it could have been a $25,000 fine if we didn't get it.
All right, thank you very much. Anything else to add to John Sevier operations? All right, moving on to John Sevier disposition. I'll give a quick update on that. There was a phone call a couple days ago this week between Diana, myself, Pete Peterson, and the folks over at LHP. That phone call was designed to give Mr. Peterson an introduction to LHP, let them give us an update on their due diligence. As a reminder, the memorandum of understanding with them was signed October 16th. They have a 90-day due diligence period. So that'll put us November, December, January 16th that we can be looking forward to getting that information back. Right now they're working on a rent comp study to see how much they can raise rents. They have identified that rents are fairly low over there, which, you know, anytime rents are low, that affects feasibility. So that's part of the due diligence that they're doing right now. And again, we can look forward to hearing back on January 16th from them, but we'll likely have updates between now and then. So that is the John Sevier disposition update. Diana, anything you want to add from that call?
No, just to let everybody know, I speak with Alvin or Corey on a at least once a week, if not, and Lara Lundy is their due diligence officer. And so there's been a lot of communication going back and forth. They've been asking for some background documents and things that we can provide that their attorney in Washington, D.C. needs for them to make their decision. And so so there's been ongoing communication. They feel certain that they will be able to bring a proposal to us prior to the 90-day deadline.
Very good. Thank you. On to new business. JCDA appointment to the Downtown Johnson City Foundation. As part of the letter of intent, we need to select a board member to serve on the foundation. Craig serves as the current chair of that board. He can give us an update on the first meeting.
Thanks, Brent. Yeah, so we had our first meeting with the newly constituted board, and I feel like we're going to have some great engagement there. As Brent mentioned, and as we've discussed, we want an appointed board member position to the foundation as well. I'll continue to serve in my current role, but we will also need an additional appointed board member to represent JCDA on the foundation.
And just a qualification, Craig's term ends at the, he has 1 year left on his term. He could be your JCDA representative for this 1 year, or if, because he's going to be probably rolling off the JCDA as soon as he moves, my recommendation was you go ahead and choose someone to fill that slot that would be able to be a 2-year term on the foundation. They
So with
meet
that being said-
5
I'm
times a
sorry.
year. They meet 5 times a year.
Thank you, Diana. With that being said, would anyone be willing to serve on that board? Again, meets 5 times a year. This would be the Johnson City Development Authority's appointed position on the Downtown Johnson City Foundation.
I'd like to volunteer to be on that board.
Thank you, Tracy.
I make a motion to nominate appointing Tracy as the board position.
I will second the motion.
All right. We have a first and a second and a big thank you. All right. Can we get a roll call on that if there's no further discussion? Please, Lindsay.
Hank Carr,
Yes.
Shannon Castillo,
Yes.
Tracy
Yes.
Johnson,
Can I vote on myself? Get me.
Jody Jones,
Yes.
Brent Long,
Yes.
Brady Malone,
Yes.
Aaron Murphy,
Yes.
Lindsay Nichols,
Yeah.
William Roller,
Yes.
Seth Thomas,
Yes.
Craig Torbett,
Yes.
and Joe Wise.
Yes.
All right. Congratulations, Tracy. Moving on to the chair report, as has been alluded to earlier, we are rescheduling our December meeting. It will be Friday, December 4th at 8 a.m. We will not be meeting on December 18th unless needed. So make sure to mark that in your all's calendars. And also another reminder to take a few minutes and provide comment to development services on the bridge plan. This is very important. You can reference Diana's email that was sent out on November 10th to find the link for that. That's all we have from the chair report. Moving on to staff reports. Staff reports are in the packet. Jim, would you like to give folks a quick update on where we are with getting financials out?
Yeah, the September financials have been finally, as of yesterday, submitted to BCS to do the roll up into our normal financial statements. I think that they will be available maybe this week, although the holidays might impact that, but certainly the week after that. October and November I'm continuing to enter things for those. So that shouldn't be this much of a delay. It's really, as I mentioned earlier, it's really just fixing some earlier problems that caused the delay and the audit. So I would suspect that we'd be able to provide the financials within 2 weeks.
Great. Thank you for that, Jim. Thank you for your hard work. I know you've had a lot on your plate with this audit and everything going on. Thank you for getting all that taken care of. Lindsay, do you have an update from marketing?
Sure. We're in the process of a lot of campaigns for downtown, especially geared around holiday shopping, dining, and exploring. We want to make sure that with the Christmas trees in the park, we're pulling people in from Founders Park to visit our businesses downtown. So we've got a lot of upcoming promotions that are mentioned in the packet as well. We're also, yesterday, we just received a video from Ketch, who is the co-author of the Wagon Wheel song, and he gave us a little shout out as well as the mural that has the wagon wheel theme in downtown. So he sent that video, and I'm going to send it out to the media today, post it on our website and all over social media as well. It's really cool. So hopefully that's a nice little marketing tool that we'll have get a lot of traction on. Other than that, I think that my summary in the packet says it all.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for your time today. there's nothing else, we will stand adjourned.
One last thing, real quick.
Yes.
We got 5 minutes for 30 minutes. Just wanted to, in my report, I did meet, and Craig met with us once, but we met with the 2 new county commissioners on an individual basis, about an hour and a half meeting, went through the redevelopment plan, how the redevelopment district was created, the impact that TIF has had, how TIF works, and really just gave a really good overview. And I have to say those 2 meetings were just that was really good. Both commissioners seem to understand the benefit and the impact that TIF has had on the redevelopment district and downtown and the county overall. So I would say those two new county commissioners are, I hope that they will be really good partners when it comes to TIF. So wanted to bring that up. And then the other thing is, as part of the strategic leadership, we've begun doing weekly staff meetings. And I think that's been real beneficial for Lindsay and Jim and I. We know what's going on because we're our small office, but we're just sort of laying out, very specific goals and everything that we're working on throughout the week. And so just wanted to bring those 2 things to you. That's all I have.
Thank you for that update. Thank you. Well, with that, happy Friday to everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving to everyone next week.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving. Y'all take care.